Ready?
Mm-hmm.
Ekabo. Welcome everybody. Peace and blessings.
I want more Duduwa, more Karojire, more. I want Omo Yoruba.
Ashe.
Ekabo. Welcome
I am IFA Jimini Ray.
And I am IFA Tegunshe.
And you were tuned in to the greatest podcast
on
the planet. Let's talk IFA.
Ashe,
wow.
Ashe, wow.
Ashe Madupe.
All right, we're back again.
How was everybody? I hope everybody's doing well. We are here again. Life is lifing, you know. As usual, we pray for you and your families, your loved ones. There's a lot going on in the world. So we are here to send positivity and blessings to you and yours.
Ashe.
Ashe. This episode of Let's Talk IFA, what are we talking about today, my brother?
Man, you know, I was pondering one morning. I was in the shrine room, and I was going through my mind. I was thinking about. I was actually making an appeasement and prayer to my Iyemanja, which took me back. As I was doing it, it took me back to my Yawo training. For some reason, these thoughts and memories start coming back. And I said, wow. And so just going from there, I was like, you know, I came up under, like, looking at...
Tell the people what a Yawo training is. So a lot of people don't look and they may not know what that is.
Right, because, and this was, I was like, wow. Because I'm looking at today's generation of initiates. I'm gonna say initiates, right? And
not priests and priestesses, because once you get initiated, that does not make you a priest or a priestess. And we'll come back to that, but I don't want to break your train of thought. But
what you said, that was in my mind too. Yeah. So I was like, wow. So as I'm thinking, I'm thinking about the foundation that was laid down for myself and the other young priests that came up in my generation.
And this is 1995, right?
No, actually, I got initiated as an OLORISHA priest in 1987. February 28th.
95 was IFA.
87, yeah. 95 was IFA.
Okay, so 87, you were initiated to Iyemanja.
I was initiated to Iyemanja.
And Iyawo, for those who don't know, means that when you're initiated to Orisha, Iyawo, you're married to that Orisha. You're like bride. The wife, the bride of that Orisha. So Iyawo training is saying that his initial training during and after his initiation, right? We just want to make it plain for some people that don't know.
Right. So I'm like, wow. And I'm thinking about everything that I went through as a Yawo that I don't even see in today's generation. For me, going through my Yawo training gave me a form of discipline, a form of humility, patience, character, you know. And I said, wow. I'm like, wow. And so as I'm doing that, you know, I finished everything. And so I had to do a dafa. So, you know, I went to my bookshelf to get a book just to get some information out to Odu. And there drops out of the book case the OLORISHA book.
The OLORISHA handbook from
this OLORISHA handbook
Oyotunji Kingdom.
From Oyotunji Kingdom back in the day.
What year you think that was written?
This was written in
70s.
It was, I believe it was in the 80s. It was the early 80s.
Early 80s.
Probably around 82. This book was written by Sageman Adefumi the first about Oyotunji. This
book is important because, you know, and I'm going to let you get back to your point, but Oyotunji village, Oyotunji Kingdom and the Obao Sejamin Baratorun is the progenitor and the genesis of anybody that's coming along today in the last, at any point, not only in America, but in the whole diaspora, has the Obawaja, the first Oba to think.
Ashe. So Obao Sejamin for us in the diaspora is like the Oduduwa.
Benny.
The Oduduwa of the West Africa, right?
And the history is important to know because newer people that are coming into this may not realize or understand that you wouldn't even be able to do this if it were not for the sacrifices that this man and the people that were with him, that they did for us to be able to. So
you gotta know history.
You gotta know the history.
I don't care if you Isheshe Lagba. I don't care if you Condomble, Lukumi, whatever. You got to know this history.
Hoodoo, voodoo. You got to know this history because they started it all.
And it was born. Guess where it was born out of?
The revolution.
The revolution.
Benny.
These were nationalists
meaning
who
that
had the audacity to say, we taking off the clothes of the European and we putting on the clothes of our ancestors and we marching.
Yeah.
And we're going to march down the Harlem streets, the Manhattan streets, and we're going to promote our culture by wearing our clothes, by playing our drums, by singing our African songs
that
we
language,
do know,
the language,
speaking the language,
and we're talking about what the 50s, the 60s, the 70s. Y'all, you got to understand how revolutionary this was. This was a revolutionary movement. This was not.
It came out of the Garvey
and religion,
movement. Right. It came out of all of those movements that was going on. The Black Panther movement, Stokely Carmichael, and all. It came out of. It was born out of that movement because they said when Martin Luther King and Malcolm X got assassinated, you had these Africans, that was trying to figure it out. Yeah. They finally figured it out.
Who are we?
And they said,
how do we do this?
We got to get out of these cities. We got to go back to our roots. We got to go back to nature with this thing.
And it takes a lot of courage to do that because think about all the the indoctrination and the programming, that we got to everything was to make you say that this is evil, this is backwards, this is, black magic, is voodoo, is this, that, and the third. For this man to be inspired by his trip going to Haiti, speaking of the first king, Obawaja, when he was with the Catherine Dunham dance troupe.
That's true, right.
And to be, to say, oh, like I'm feeling at home with it. This is what I'm missing. And to go back and actually follow up with that and go to Montanzas, to the Afro-Cubans and get initiated. You got to have a lot of courage because, you don't know what you're really getting yourself into. You're trying to reestablish yourself, but he was guided and led by a higher force and a higher power. Like this man was really a prophet for real.
Obao Sejamin. So this OLORISHA book that you see before you has all of the elements needed to be a custodian of African culture, science, and spirituality. It has the platform for those who were initiated in the diaspora. And this book fell out the case when I went to go look for something. I said, whoa, look how spirit work.
Benny.
Look how it worked. So I started reading through it again. Now, mind you, when I was growing up in Oyotunji, this was one of the textbooks that we had when we were young, going to the Yoruba Royal Academy School.
Benny.
We had to have that book, and so especially if you was initiated, because In those times when they started initiating, a lot of the young people were getting initiated.
Man.
Like they were initiating, you know, the young people from you know, knee high, they was being initiated. Right. So this OLORISHA book gives you a clear understanding of the discipline, the codes of conduct to one who is initiated or an initiate becoming a priest. Because now today, people go, they get initiated, and they come back and they say, I'm a Babalawo.
There's no system.
An OLORISHA priest. Yeah. And it's like, you just got initiated last week. You got initiated 2 weeks ago. How are you putting that on you? How are you putting that title on yourself like that?
And some of that is priests and priestesses' fault because it's the language, right? Like sometimes you'll hear people say, "Oh, he's a priest" or "She's a priestess." What they're really saying is that he's initiated or she's initiated, and we have to be careful with our language because a lot of times, like if I'm talking or if I hear somebody talking that's old or old school, I know what they mean. But a lot of new people younger people, they don't understand. They don't know that that actually means that being a priest or a priestess is what you learned, is what you've experienced, is what you know, is what you studied, it's your character, it's your teacher saying that, okay, taking you through these levels and say it's okay now you are a priest or a priestess or whatever. There's a process to it.
Protocol.
There's a process to it. So, you're an initiate. If you're initiated, you're not a priest or a priestess. You're an initiate or whatever you were initiated to. What makes you a priest or a priestess, it takes years. Not months.
Studying. Years of discipline.
To learn, right.
Years of building your character, your behavior.
Right.
And in this book, it goes into the things that a new initiate has to go through in order to start on that road to becoming a priest. This book has the many challenges and disciplinary things that a Yawo has to go through.
It literally breaks down
the humility test.
Benny.
The test where you got to walk around blindfold. Those things like that.
You talk about Aboku for a minute. This book explains, this is the origin and genesis of Orisha, Ifa, worship and veneration, ancestor veneration. Everything is in here. This is how it started here in America through the kingdom of Oyatunji. So if you look, sometimes you say, okay, well, they do things a little different, or why do they do this or that? It's all explained here because guess what? Back then, there was nobody from Africa saying, hey, let me show you the way. Let me show you how to do this or this and that. They got what they got from the Afro-Cubans, and then they had to come back here and start this for African Americans in America. Because, we are different from any group of melanated people on the planet. We
are so different. We're almost like we're the cosmic children. We are part of everybody.
Benny.
And that's a blessing.
Benny.
That's not a curse.
And they had to get it from the mud, right? So they went to Dahomey and Benin and learned voodoo. They went to Nigeria and learn Ifa Orisha. So yeah, you see that in this book because we had to
People
go
don't
get
know
it.
that.
They had to reestablish this thing that was nothing.
You know what I tell people? When they say, because a lot of people say, well, I went to Nigeria and got initiated, and you can kind of see the little like, so it's like, well, that's beautiful. That's your destiny.
I say.
But we've at Oyotunji have been dealing with Nigerians since the 70s.
Since the 70s.
Ouch.
You know what I mean?
Since the 70s. We know a lot of people, you'd be surprised who we know.
I say.
And who we didn't work with.
I say.
But all of that history is in this book here.
It's in the book.
It's in this OLORISHA book here. And it's not a lot of pages, but what's written is very powerful.
Yeah.
It's not 100 and some odd pages. But this is very concrete information, history.
And it explains a lot of things about initiation in general.
And why we do it the way we do it on this side of the water for what we dealing with here.
Right.
You know,
a lot of people don't even know. People that were initiated here, a lot don't even understand this stuff that's in this book. It really breaks down the purpose of initiation and the different aspects of it, not going into the secrets or any rites or rituals or anything like that. But like, for instance, breaking down your individual, your ego, so that you understand you're a collective part of the community, humility. All of those things were built into the processes of initiation, post-initiation, like after initiation. Even the Ibn Malosha, the priest council, which was the council that trained the priests and, certified them and said, okay, you taking your test, you displayed good character or whatever. Now you can do X, Y, and Z, A, B, and C, whatever. It was a system of checks and balances and, an institution.
About Sageman and the chiefs that were around him, they were geniuses because, in order to be reborn, you got to die, right? You got to go through that process of death, right?
And that's what initiation is, for those who don't know.
Right. And so before, the system that was established in Oyotunji, before you even got initiated, you had to go through the Aboku.
Benny, let's talk about that for a minute. What is that?
So the Aboku is like a spirit, right? And the Aboku process is the death of one's personality.
The death of your old personality. The death of the things in you that need to die.
Ego, the death of your personality, the death of your ego.
Right. Because Ayewo Iku is not always talking about you physically dying. A lot of times it's talking about things in you that need to die so that other things can be reborn, so that you can be the best version of yourself, right? So that was part of what
that's what the Aboku ceremony, right? So I was in Aboku myself. I was probably around, I believe I was 11 years old when I became an Aboku. I went through that process.
Talk about that a little bit, what that was like.
So
as much as you can.
I don't want to go into the secrets of it, because the secret, which a lot of times we don't even, secrets is no more, because people do sacrifice and show Orisha what's inside the Orisha pot and the internet and Instagram. They show in the pot.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, if you happen to look inside of a Orisha pot that you didn't have, that scared you. Like, as a kid, I was scared. Like, I was covering my eyes not to look in it.
Right.
Because if I did see inside, I had to quickly, it was said, you got to get that Orisha. You better tell your parent, like, you looked in that Orisha box, you got to get that Orisha.
You can't unsee
Bye-bye. Yeah, got to come up with some money quick for you to get that Orisha, because you didn't saw some secrets that you wasn't supposed to see. So it was serious back then, like that. So the Aboku process, again, is the death of one's personality and the death of one's ego, right? So I know for me personally, I was in Aboku for about a year. Right? No, actually, right. I was in Aboku for a year. Right? And then I went through my initiation process. But the Aboku ceremony, you are a spirit, right? And you have to walk around the village with your face white and efun, and a veil and a mat. Because at that time, abokus and yawos, you had to sit, which we still practice. You had to sit on the mat, right? And you can't, somebody have to bring you your food, right? And sit it down on your mat in front of you. You know, those things. The aboku, an aboku had to wear white.
Benny.
You a spirit. So it's almost like you sing, but you're not seen.
But you're not heard.
You're not heard, seen, but you can't speak.
Right.
Nothing. You a spirit in the process of rebirth.
Of dying to be reborn again.
Right. So as an aboku, it's symbolic to you being dead. You're a spirit.
Benny.
But you're going through a process. So there's a time limit on being an aboku. Benny. Right. Then you go into initiation, which is the rebirth process, right? That's how it was established. But going through that aboku rites, you know, I just know for me personally, going through that process of being an aboku, a spirit, it gave me a lot of discipline, right? Because I had to wear white. I had to sit on the floor.
Benny.
On the mat. I had to sleep on the floor.
Right.
Right?
So you all of that is medicine. Humility. That's medicine.
That's medicine. Sleeping on the floor in white, you know, on your mat.
Perhaps to develop your character.
Develop your character. I don't know if people can. I don't know if Yawos even sleep on the floor on the mat today.
So these are practices that Obawaja came up with because he knew what we were dealing with over here in this country. Right? So they may not do these things, certain things are done differently from in Nigeria or Brazil or wherever, because they had to recreate based on what they learned from the Afro-Cubans. They had to take that system, implement it here in America, and make a few little modifications for, you know, for the betterment for our people. You know what I'm saying? So that's where those rites and rituals came from, and some of them are still done today. For some people that wonder what some of the differences and why, you know, Otunji Kingdom does this or does that. One of the things that really fascinated me too in there was in this book, it talks about how the first Oba basically banned the use of the images of the saints, of the white saints, like, you know, the Cubans and everybody else was doing. Because why? Because this came out of a revolutionary movement. We don't need to do that anymore. Right. We're reclaiming our Africanism to the core.
Right. And they had to do that to show African people at that time that look at the Orishas in your image.
Right. And not...
How you going to worship an Orisha in somebody else's image?
Right.
We ain't knocking nobody else's image. It's not
them, because they did. We give Ekushe. We give thanks to all our brothers in Santeria, Candomblé. They did what they had to do
all of them
at that time.
Right.
So we thank them and we honor them. So it's not like that. Right. But we're saying now, here we come along
African
now. As African people, we coming back.
That's how we have to look at Shango. We have to look at Ogun. We have to look at Iyemanja, Oshun in our image. That's how you get the blessings when you pray into an Orisha in your image. And you see it, you see that Orisha in your image. You see those ancestors in your image.
It's just like the white Jesus.
Why
you can't, you can't, you know.
One of the reasons why ancestor veneration and worship is so important and powerful is because you are honoring those ancestors in your bloodline. That's of your image.
Your image, not a white person, not somebody else's.
Not somebody else. Image. Because then you're giving power to that.
You give them
you're giving your African power to somebody else in another image.
Benny. And so they weren't having that.
They wasn't having that.
We talk about Malcolm X, Marcus Garvey. We're not doing that.
Right. These revolutionaries who came out of those movements helped to establish your Yoruba culture, spirituality, and science in South Carolina, in the Gullah Islands, in the bush.
Benny.
It wasn't nothing. It wasn't no houses there. They pioneered the land, and they start building. Yeah. It was bobcats. It was snakes. It was all kind of wild animals.
Mosquitoes. But forget the snakes.
The mosquitoes were the worst. Woo. The mosquitoes was the worst.
Boy.
But they pioneered and built African village. Now,
and that's what,
if you don't know that history,
you gotta know,
or you talking about this place called Oyotunji, and you got something negative to say about it, you got to do the history.
Yeah, you got to kind of check yourself.
You know, people have their opinions, and that's just the world we live in.
And people are people. Once you know, nobody's perfect.
But when you do the history, you're gonna say,
you got to respect.
It's gonna make you. You got to respect that, because you're gonna think different.
Yeah,
because. Now, we fast forward today, we 50-something years later, almost 60, we don't have another African village.
Benny.
We don't have another African village. As much culture that is flowing through these streets now, as much money that you have flowing through this culture today,
Benny.
In 2024, you mean to tell me we can't buy no land to start another village or a couple of more villages?
Because that's what it's about. Land is sovereignty. Having the land, being independent, being off the grid or whatever, you know, that independence. This culture is about building. That's what it's supposed to be about, but we've gotten away from that. All of us have. And we're now trying to help use this platform to steer everybody back to that, right? We should, like I said before, I think I said it on the previous show, we should have a school in every major urban city. A Yoruba school. Not, even if you have different Ilays in that area, there should be one Yoruba school. And there should also be, this is now what the current Oba, Oloyotunji, talks about, when he goes and visits the Hindu temple, in this, say, Atlanta or Charlotte or whatever, it's not 16 of them, it's one. Now, you may have some little divisions within inside of there where people have their own groups, but there's power in that unity, in that community of having, let's say, one big Yoruba temple in Charlotte or Atlanta or whatever, you know? Because now we can come together as a group and use our resources to build something and make it, you know, better for our people, have our own environment where our kids can be safe in school, where we can eat food, where we don't have to worry about recalls and getting sick and from the poison in the food, and you know, all of that kind of stuff.
See, that's why I stay away from, me personally, I don't really get into the whole Ile concept.
Yeah.
I don't get into the Ile concept because it's easy to start a Ile. I mean, you got Babalawos who've been initiated for a couple of months and they got an Ile now.
Or an initiate.
Well, that's an
initiated for a couple of months.
Couple of weeks.
You ain't no Babalawo if you've been initiated for a couple of months. Let's just make that clear.
Or how about a couple of years?
Couple of years. You still ain't a Babalawo.
What happened to Awo Kekere?
You're Omo Awo Kekere. Kekere is little. Omo Kekere, you're learning. Omo Awo, you're a child of the Awo, right? That's what I call myself.
That's what I call myself. And I'm initiated to IFA, 95. I still call myself Awo Kekere.
You gotta be humble.
Myself Awo,
you know,
not Babalawo. Whoa. You know,
if you really understood what Babalawo, what that really entailed, like a real Babalawo, it's a disgrace for some people that call themselves, or just to throw that term around lightly, or Yanifa.
Yeah, that's
for the people who studied for years and years and years. You can't, you know.
I mean, I see 80-year-old Awos call themselves Awos.
Benny.
Humbly.
Benny, I say.
You know them say Babalawo. You have some that say Babalawo, but and they earn that right to say that. But you know, these are, and so this is, you know, going back to the OLORISHA.
Benny.
The information in here kind of steers you towards understanding the concept that these pioneers about Sagerman and all of the chiefs that followed him and that worked with him, what they were doing. You know, the priesthood was the think tank.
The Igbi Malosha. So let's talk about that.
Was
the priest council.
Ooh, so the priest council in Oyotunji was the Igbi Malosha, right? They even had an Igbi Malosha hall. So there was we had a 2-story building, and on the right-hand side, when you go into the Afin, the 2-story there, on the right-hand side of that 2-story was the Igbi Malosha Hall.
Benny.
And had all Egyptian writings. I can remember it clearly. Had all Egyptian writing, Egyptian writing and paintings on it. And there, because Abba Sagerman was fascinated with Egyptian history and culture and the hieroglyphs and the science. So so that's where the priests met. And as I said, Igbi Malosha is like the think tank of Oyotunji. It's where the priests came together, and those who were initiated, they learned. They had a place where they can go every week or every month to learn.
So this was basically an institution of priests in the
a big institution.
Let me read it. The Igbi Malosha, the brain trust or think tank for Oyotunji Kingdom is the Igbi Malosha, the priest council. Its members are required to research, analyze, interpret, and debate every aspect of Yoruba life, past, present, and throughout the diaspora. It is they that have defined the religion and the culture as existing on 2 planes, the cosmic and the ethnic. You know, and I can go on into that, but it was
But this is where they went, and it was like, you know how you a scientist in the lab and you trying to figure these things. That was the Igbi Malosha. That's where the priests came together to figure out these things. You know,
because there's a lot of levels to the culture. They were responsible not just for learning and studying and teaching Ifa and Orisha on a spiritual level, but they went into all of the levels, right? Because the culture in its totality consists of systems. How do you run the society? You know, it's not just the priesthood, because it was a functioning village.
Right.
You had a school, you had to deal with stuff.
In those days, myself, I was one of the guys. I was a runner. I was a page, as they say. So we would sit in the meetings, and we were one of the ones when somebody needed something, we had to go run and do it. So, but we soaked up everything just sitting there while we were doing it, right? So one of the first things that I learned in the Igbi Malosha, and I can remember this clearly, is when it wasn't about Sagerman that said it, was one of the chief priests that said, it was a Gungun priest. He said, the Egungun initiates are the custodians of the tradition. I remember that, hearing that. The Egungun priests, the ancestor priests, are the custodians of the tradition.
Not just the spiritual aspect, but all aspects. You got
aspects of the tradition.
You know, fat clothing. You got language. You've got, what are our folk? Here's where we're going. Our folk ways, our mores, our norms, our ways of living, because we lost all of that coming over here and trying to deal with the European culture of individualism, of all those different things, right? So this was the think tank to say, okay, how do we reestablish ourselves as Africans in a totality, right? It also says in here that another function of the Igbi Malosha was to act as court to mediate disputes between the numerous priesthoods at Oyotunji, Because you have to deal with things like that. When you have a village or a kingdom.
When you have a town.
You can't just, it ain't about, the religious or the spiritual aspect of it all day. You have to deal with all different types of things. So now we're going into Ogboni, the legislative branch of the government. And the Ibn Malosha was an important figure, institution in that, with all of that.
They started an Ogboni society. You know how powerful that is?
Benny.
These were African Americans who took off the clothes of the European, put on their African clothes, and said, we're going to start our own town. And within that town, we're going to start our own organizations. And in Ogboni, we have to have something to govern us by.
So talk about, what is Ogboni? Right, what is Ogboni?
Ogboni is not just the government and that just deals with politics. There's a spiritual side to the Ogboni society as well. Edan. And the members of Ogboni are the custodians of the land. The Yaba is the landlord, right? But then the chiefs, the landowners, and those who hold positions within that in the Ogboni society, they are custodians of the land, right? So everything that happens on that land goes through the Ogboni. If you're building a new building, it goes through Ogboni. Funds that comes through the town, that goes out of the town, all of that is managed and governed by the Ogboni society. The giving out of land to residents or new residents who are going to become chiefs or landowners, that goes through the Ogboni. So it is the powerhouse of the
kingdom,
leaders,
the leaders
within the kingdom,
like the wise council, the wise elders. That's supposed to be kind of like what the Ogboni is, that deals with different matters in the kingdom or the village. That also another important function of Ogboni is the checks and balances, to check the Oba if the Oba gets out of control, right? And the Ogboni is related to, the earth, or Nile, and Edan, the Orisha of Ogboni. So all these things were established or reestablished and had to be recreated, and they didn't have any help or guidance other than, they had some people that they were dealing with. Like I said, the Oba was initiated in Matanzas, Cuba, so they had, some people there. But when they were first building and doing all of this stuff, they had to research and they had to recreate these systems as best they could on this land without the help from anybody in Africa. That came a little later, after the village was built and established and all of that stuff. Then that door opened up where, to Nigeria and Benin and stuff like that.
So one will wonder if this group of people didn't go to Africa to get none of this stuff, and they started, they got stuff from Cuba, they got, bits and pieces
initially, right.
What made them leave the cities and go way down south in the bush, and
all the mosquitoes,
start
and alligators,
an African village? Where did that come from?
And copperheads,
rattlesnakes,
all of that.
Like what?
You gotta respect it.
Who taught them to do that? Because one would say today, well, who's your Oluwo? You know what I mean? And how did you know that?
Right.
And would say, well, my Oluwo is from such and such and such, and he taught me this.
Yeah.
But these pioneers,
they didn't have that.
They Obal Sagerman traveled the world and stuff like that, and you had other chiefs that was part of the circle, you know, they traveled and they saw things in the world, but they were still nationalists then.
Right.
But what possessed them to come together to do this?
Yeah.
And the only thing I can say is the ancestors. The ancestors. Because I remember Mauluwo Ajamu saying, Ibarachurun, him saying one time to me, he said, you know, some of these rituals, we were just, you know, kind of guided by spirit. But once we started coming around people like in the Lukumi and the West Africans started coming, he said, we saw them do their stuff. He said, the way we did it, we thought we was making something up. But they did it exactly the way spirit told us to do it.
I say.
So it's like, this is why we say, I am compelled by a spiritual force that I cannot resist. This is one of the reasons we say that. Because we know the ancestors are real. Because the ancestors had to talk to Oseju.
They had to be behind that.
It was one of his chiefs that said, man, we got to get out of the cities doing this Orisha thing. We got to take this back to the country. This is a nature-based spirituality. They said religion in, but it says this is a nature-based religion. Man, this stuff got to go in nature. And that's what took them down south, right? And what I'm trying to get to people is that they had a passion, they had a drive.
I say.
They had the heart, they had the seriousness.
Courage.
To go in the woods. Full of snakes. Mosquitoes was just crazy. Bobcats.
And build a village.
Fox. All kind of wild animals.
Stuff they never seen in New York.
And all they can find was out there was probably some tin or some trees. And they had to build their house. And they started from that. And today, you can pay some money and buy your title and flash it, but you paying rent. You still living in an apartment. Or you living in a house that you paying rent. But you this big chief or whatever. And social media is the only platform where you can look good.
Oh, man.
You know what I mean? But our elders was like, in order for you to look good,
you had to
build
be
a
there.
House
you had to do something.
Land.
You don't have to do nothing now. You can now everything is instant. You know, if you wanted to see it, you had to be there. If somebody wanted to see you, they had to be there. You had to be somewhere. You had to do something. You had to build something. You had to be about something. You had to help people. You had to heal people. You know.
It's and I'm not trying to knock anybody. I'm just saying, you know, when you look back, and I was happy to grow up to be that generation that still got that. You know, that got that hardcore Yawo training. You know what I'm saying? I was able to go through Akinkanju when Akinkanju was just like
the men's society.
When you had
Oyotunji Kingdom, the men's rites of passage society.
You know, when there was a militia established, you know, I was able to go through that process.
For those who don't know, Oyotunji Kingdom had a militia. They had uniforms. They had, you know, arms and weapons. They had discipline. They had training. You know what I'm saying? That all these things, you know, they had the school. You had the Imig Council. The Oba was ahead of his time. And a lot of these concepts, and that's why we chose this topic today, because this book is important because of the history in here.
Please go and buy it. You can buy this. If you go to Oyotunji, you can buy it. You're really not going to find nothing like this online, like a lot of other books. But you need to visit the kingdom. If you are an initiate, you should visit the kingdom of Oyotunji, and you should, if you are an initiate, you should not leave Oyotunji without having this book here. There's a lot in here. And it was written in, I believe it was written in 1982, if I can remember.
And if you're thinking about being an initiate, or you're just curious about the history, you know, you should definitely take a look at this, buy this book, read the history. You got to know your history. Like, even if you're coming into this now, recently or whatever, and, you know, your Ile or your Oluos in Nigeria or whatever, that's cool, that's fine. But you need to know this history. If you are born and raised, if you live in America or North America or the diaspora, because a lot of this has spread to Trinidad, to the Caribbean, to, you know, all over the place. And you need to know this history.
I say, even if you coming from Nigeria or you coming from Brazil or any place and you moving over here, you should get this book to see what the priest had to go through, you know, in order to become a priest. You should get this here. You know, this book is a very important book because it lays it down for you. It lays
I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm gonna go back real quick before we wind this up. Because I remember I have this, but I don't have it in this form. I had a pamphlet that was copied. And this part right here, I never forget the first day I read it. This actually helped me to understand. Because before I used to wonder, like, okay, the Orisha, you know, Egungun, you know, the pots and stuff. Like, I didn't quite understand the elements and the pots and how all that works. And I'm going to read a quick
elements.
I'm going to read a quick excerpt from here if I can find it, where Baba talks about the Obawajah talks about the science, the making of the gods, the making of the Orisha. Yoruba religion is a form of African science. I'm going to just read this paragraph real quick because this helped me to understand really what was going on in these with these Orisha that are personalized to us, these energies. Sacrifices of goats, guinea, sheep, chickens, pigeons, quail, etc. must be performed over selected stones, symbols, and objects of lead, silver, brass, gold, or iron, etc. in order to create your Orisha. A subtle chemical reaction is produced when herbal extractions, omiero, and blood, eje, are allowed to interact with the molecular and atomic compositions of these minerals and elements.
Booyah!
The energy field thus produced either directly corresponds to or closely approximates the electromagnetic flow of the energies from the distant planets. It is now admitted by most advanced scientists, even in the West, that all life and behavior, plant and animal, is controlled by astral energy. Hence, when these small Orisha reactors or pots are placed in crucibles and are regularly fed, the resultant radiation may be purposely directed by the brain and sound waves from your intensely concentrated chanting and prayer. I'm gonna just end it right there. When I read that you know really helped me to understand what was going on with that. I was like, wow,
why do they feed that like that?
Right?
Why do they watch that?
Because some of y'all out here right now that's initiated don't even understand what I just read. Let's keep it real.
And they just doing it though. Some of people are doing it and don't understand the
what they're doing and why they're doing it. You know what I'm saying? So we're always on a positive vibration here. We're never knocking anybody because we're trying to help people elevate and understand what they're doing and why they're doing it. So understanding the history, understanding, you know, all these things are in this book. We pay homage to Obawajah, we pay homage to all the priests and priestesses who had the courage to come through and deal with this thing, you know, get initiated and help build a village and help build IFA, Orisha, in this country. And, you know, we want to recognize and pay homage and respect to everybody out here, all the devotees, all the initiates, all the priests and priestesses. You know, let's come together. You know, the time is now for us to do something different. This is where we're going with this episode now, right? Once you understand that history, all of the, you know, we don't need anything to divide us. Whatever your Ile, your Luo, your whatever, that's all good. It's great. It's awesome. But let's do more collectively to come together to reproduce Black Wall Street. What the ancestors did and what we can do again under the guidance and under the, what's the word I'm looking for? Using this as a foundation and as a system, as a way to do it, you know?
Ashe.
So, you know, we pay homage. Ifa Bawa She, Dumari Bawa She, Awana Shuku Bawa She. Ifa will make a way.
Ashe.
Olodumare will make a way, the creator. Awan Allah Sheku, the ancestors will make a way.
Ashe.
We give thanks and praise.
Ashe. And I also want to say that we have the annual festival, Odun, for Iyemoja.
Ashe.
On July 29th to the 30th.
Ashe.
Of 2024 at the Oyotunji African Village.
Benny.
Please come and celebrate with us.
The great mother.
The great mother, Iyemanja, the mother of womanhood, the mother of children, the mother of fish. You know, the mother who helps to sustain us, right? Let's honor our mothers on that day of June 29th to June 30th of 2024.
And then after that, the week after that, we have our IFA festival. It's also Ajay. We'll be venerating Ajay.
Ashe.
And also it's King's Day Festival. So we have a couple of coordinations and chieftaincy installations, by which one will be myself. Will be receiving the title of Ariapo.
The brother deserves it too.
Which is esteemed, beloved Chief Ajamu Ibaratorun. That was his title when he was here. So yes, come and join us. That is going to be the weekend of July 6th and 7th.
Ashe.
If you can make it, come and support and be a part and come and put your eyes on it. You know, I tell people all the time that if you want to learn about this culture and be a part of it, reading books, yes, you need to do that. Watching videos, yes, you need to do that. But you have to move and you have to go places and see things. And this is a hands-on, this is a eyes-on, you have to go feel the energy.
And it's so easy. It's you know, just come.
Don't be scared. Bring your family, bring the kids. They're going to love it more than you. Just get in your car and roll out.
It's a festival. You know, and you come and you participate. You say, you know, find where you can fit in and you just go with the flow. It's nothing.
You may not know what's going on. Just come enjoy yourself.
Yes.
Everybody's going to be friendly. You're not going to feel like, oh, what am I doing here? Or I feel funny because I don't know. No. When first time I came to the village, I knew absolutely nothing and nobody. But, you know what I'm saying, here I am now. You know, it was cool. So come, enjoy the festivals. We will also be talking about several initiatives that we have soon for Oyotunji Kingdom. First and foremost with us is the reestablishment of the Yoruba Royal Academy. That is the school. So we will be launching that soon. We'll be giving more details about what we need and how we need to go about doing that. We have the women's temple that we need to build. We have the men's compound. So I think those are probably the three biggest. And of course, we have infrastructure projects. We want to improve our restroom facilities. We want to improve all the infrastructure, you know, the sewer, the water, electric, make sure all that's good so that the village is comfortable. And it's 2024. So, you know, let's show the power of our Orisha. Let's put our money where our mouth is. We're transparent. It's going down. And
donate, because you're donating towards, when you donate, you're keeping, not only are you keeping the town alive, but you're keeping the history alive. You're keeping you're building a legacy for your children. Whenever you put your dollar or your money and you donate your money, you know, this is a place in the future where your children or your grandchildren can come and say, my mother and my father donated.
And that's real talk.
This building of this land. You know, we looking at the future here. So African people, you know, we have to begin to unify. And unifying doesn't mean that we're going to be on the same page all the time. But unifying means when you unify for the betterment of a people. The community, your culture.
Everybody's not going to get along. Not everybody's not going to be best friends.
Everybody is not going to be.
And we don't have to be.
Right. And everybody is not going to be a worshiper of Orisha or Egungun, but still, because it's something African, let's not think religion.
Everybody's got ancestors, and that binds us all.
Right. Let's stop thinking religiously and think culturally, because culture would say, okay, I'm not a Yoruba or Omokaro Jire, but these people that look exactly like me, they doing something over there. They building something over there. I may disagree with some of the things, but you know what? These people like me, they look just like me, and they building something for our people. Let me send my $5 or my dollar or my $10 or my $20.
Some of y'all ballers out there, my $500, my $1,000, and everything is going to be transparent. The money's going to go where it's supposed to go and be used for what it's supposed to be used for. So with that, we love y'all. Thank you for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe and share so we can grow and continue to grow this platform. So we say, thank you for tuning in. I am IFA Jaminire.
I am IFA Tegunshe.
And you are tuned in to the greatest. To the greatest.
To the greatest?
To the greatest.
Let's say the greatest.
To the greatest podcast
on
the planet.
Let's
talk
IFA.
Ashewa.
Ashewa. Odabo.
Odabo. Until we greet again. Odabo. Peace and blessings, everybody.
Ashewa.
Signing out.
Odabo.